This is a diagonal crunch. Now, a lot of books and magazines call this an oblique crunch, but that's kind of deceiving because it makes you think that the obliques, the muscles on the side of the abdominals, are the only things working. And it's not so much that that's the case. All of these muscles are going to be working to some degree. So it's not an oblique muscle exercise, but it is in fact an oblique motion. But to prevent the confusion, we're going to call it a diagonal crunch or a diagonal motion. Now, getting into position is the main thing. Amy's going to reach back and grab the webbing, the strap, leaving the handle free for her to grab with the other hand, and then she's going to rest that with the arm across her body so she's got the right rope on the right shoulder held by the left hand, as you can see. Now, all she's really moving is this side, so she's crunching, and don't just think about trying to reach as far as you can. Think about using these muscles. Watch right here. Do you see that? She's going to think about pulling these ribs towards her belly button with these muscles. So it's not just twisting and it's not just rolling around, but it's a diagonal crunch, taking these ribs towards the belly button, making the ribs lead the way. The shoulder's not in charge here and the head's not in charge here. Those are not the things we're trying to move. So watch, and you'll see every time, slow down for them because they can really see the steps. She tightens, and then she heads over into diagonal. So every time that tightening and releasing, that's really the key here, so that you know what you're working. And eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to see yours the way you can see Amy's muscles working right here. Now you can see the rectus working also. There's no way to keep those out of it. So that's why I say it's more than an oblique exercise, although you may notice the obliques more than anything else. This is a seated diagonal crunch using the seat back from the leg press. It's going to work perfect for us because it's short enough that it allows us to extend a little more and create more range of motion for this crunch. The normal bench that we might use would come clear up to her head and wouldn't allow that. So this is going to be great. Now watch. One of the key things is that the adjustable arm has been adjusted to the point where the pulley is well above her shoulder. And that angle of the rope is going to be a critical component to this. Okay? Now she's reaching across, just resting this arm right against her shoulder, so she's not really having to work super hard to hold that weight. Now, I want you to watch what's happening in here. This is sometimes called an oblique crunch. Oblique meaning diagonal. But the problem with the term oblique is that typically refers to the oblique muscles. At least people make that association in their minds. And it's not just the oblique muscles we're working. We are working the internal and external obliques, but we're also working the rectus abdominis and a lot of other muscles that are unseen. So I prefer to call it a diagonal crunch so that we don't make an immediate association with one small muscle group. Now watch, the key here is of course going to be control. And Amy's going to focus on taking these ribs towards her belly button right here, that diagonal. So let's start looking at some of those. You see a lot of people think more about moving their shoulder towards their leg or something like that. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes they end up with a big uncontrolled motion. And what Amy's doing is taking advantage of this short seat so she can increase not only extension, but rotation. Now what determines how far she can go back is not just her range of motion, but watch the control, the tightening. You see, she can control the muscles that pull her out of that position. That's what makes this relatively safe for her, is her level of control. And if you just go back there saying, oh look, I can move as far as Amy, but you don't have the control of the muscles that are easing her into that position and are pulling her out of it, then that's going to make this not only uncomfortable, but potentially unsafe. So your range of motion needs to totally be dictated by what you can control with the involved muscles. All right? So watch again. All this involved, you can see rectus abdominis, upper and lower, you can see everything, but watch as she's pulling this point, tightening, trying to think about moving to this point. So it's the initial tightening that's cool. She tightens before she moves, so she's kind of engaging those muscles and drawing herself to that position. And you'll notice her low back never really leaves the bench. If you can see that, straighten this arm for 1 second, Amy, as you go forward. And you can see through here that she's doing a crunch. She's not pulling herself all the way away from the pad. So that low back stays right against there. And now I'm going to show you another variation. If we go up a notch higher, which in this example is number 2, we were down on number 3 a minute ago, we've got a greater angle in the rope because the pulley's higher, and that's going to create a little bit different resistance. You might feel more resistance at the beginning or at the end. Just see how it feels. But you've got roughly 2 options in here. If you go too high, you're only going to be resisting the crunch part, not the rotation. If you go too low, you won't be resisting much of the crunch. It'll be all rotation. So there's a nice blend in terms of angle there. And like I said, we're on window 2 or 3 with our ones that we tried. But the control is going to be the key.